Every person, everybody is running a financial operating system that was installed in childhood. And think about an operating system that we know of as PCs and Macs, right? If you try to run PC software on a Mac, it's not going to work. And if you try to run Mac software on a PC, it's not going to work unless you install certain other software to bridge that connection. And so we're running financial operating systems that control how we respond to money, debt, opportunity, risk, everything that involves our money. Our financial operating system is running behind us. And a lot of times that's running before logic or our mindset, our intelligence kicks in and enters the room. So most people have been trying to solve that software problem with hardware upgrades. When it comes to money, they feel like if I just implement a better budget or a better strategy or a better spreadsheet on top of the programs that were written long before you ever started making money. So in this video today, I'm going to show you the 4 money scripts, the specific operating systems that I watched drive financial behaviors across hundreds of clients over the 16 years that I've been an advisor. And I'm going to show you how to identify which ones are running in your finances right now. I'm also going to explain why trying to overlay a strategy on top of the wrong program is why nothing has held the way that it should. So here's what we're going to be covering: what a money operating system actually is and where it comes from, the 4 money scripts and what each one produces financially, how to identify which script is dominant in your financial life right now, why strategy alone can't fix a software program, and what it actually looks like to rewrite the program. And then one assessment to do tonight before you try any new financial plan. Let's work. So you've been running the wrong money program, right? And it's not because you're undisciplined or not because you have no self-control, not because you probably don't even have all the information, not because you haven't even tried hard enough with all the willpower that you can muster up, but it's because the operating system underneath your financial behavior that was installed before you ever earned a dollar, and maybe before you ever even could understand the concept of what money was. And that's an environment that no longer exists, right? The child you versus the adult you. And that's a life that you no longer live. So every budget, every plan, and every strategy that you've tried to implement since then, you've been trying to run that on top of an unexamined program or an out-of-date program. If you notice your computer when it needs an update or it needs to upgrade to the newest software, the system starts to get a little wonky, right? The stuff runs slow, or your programs don't open, or it just lags, and it doesn't really run at its optimal speed and performance until you do that upgrade. So this is why your plan makes complete sense on paper, right? That you've maybe got your Excel spreadsheets and you've tried to run the budget and you've got the plan that you want to do, but maybe that's why it's not matching what you're actually trying to do physically with your money. So let me define what I mean by a money operating system. Think about the device that you're watching this on right now. It has an operating system, and that controls and governs how the application runs, what's allowed, what gets prioritized, how it responds when something goes wrong. You don't see the operating system, but you see the applications, right? The operating system is what determines whether those applications work the way that they were intended to work, or that they don't work at all or lag. Your financial life works the same way. The applications, they're the visible stuff: the budget, the savings plan, the investment account, the financial decisions that you make every day. Those are what everybody can see, including you. That's your applications. The operating system is what runs underneath it: the beliefs, the responses, the patterns around money that were formed in your childhood, what money meant in the environment where you grew up, what having it said about a person, what losing it produced in the people around you, and whether money was talked about or avoided, whether it was a source of safety or conflict or silence. You didn't write that operating system consciously. You didn't choose it. It was compiled from thousands of observations and experiences and emotional responses before you even had the cognitive development to examine any of it. And here's the part that matters most for what we're going to do today. The operating system governs how you respond to financial information before your rational mind ever enters the room. So when you see a large tax bill or you get a bill in the mail and you feel physically unwell, that's an operating system responding. That's not your logic. When you get a raise and within 6 months your expenses have matched it exactly, that's your operating system running a program, not your choices. When you know exactly what you need to do financially and you can't make yourself do it no matter how much you try, or you say, I'm going to start tomorrow, I'm going to do this, and you lay out a plan and you still can't seem to do it, that's an operating system that's overriding your intention. That's why strategy alone can't fix it, right? The strategy is an application. It runs on top of the operating system. The strategy is going to run whatever the operating system tells it to do. And when those two conflict, the strategy and the operating system, and they're going to conflict every time at every income level, if you don't get this healing in that area, then the operating system is always going to win. It's always going to override the strategy in that application. You don't need a better budget. You don't necessarily need a better financial plan. You need to understand what program your budget is running on. The program has a name, and actually it has 4 possible names, and one of them is running your finances right now. Let's look at the 4 money scripts. Most people have a dominant one, but you may see a few of these like spilling over into the other, and you may identify a few of these running at the same time. Some people have a secondary one that activates under a stressful environment. So all of them made sense in the original environment that they were formed when you were a child or when you were experiencing money through the eyes and the lenses of your parents or whoever your caregivers were. But they may not make sense for you now. And if you're seeing that conflict in what you want to do with your money and what's actually happening, then it's time to upgrade that operating system. So let's look at the first money. The first money script is money is scarce. The key thing to know about the money is scarce money script is that it doesn't really have anything to do with how much money you have or your bank balance. You might have a difficulty in spending even when the money is clearly there, and it won't affect what you have or set you back any. I tell the story sometimes of one time I bought a set from Tiffany's that I really wanted, a necklace and a bracelet, and I took it home and I took it back a couple days later and returned it because I just felt like there's other stuff I could be spending my money on. Why am I spending this? This is irresponsible. And buying it would not have affected me. It wouldn't have taken away from anything that I needed to do or any responsibilities that I had. But I had a money is scarce mentality from my operating system as a child, and I just couldn't see myself making that purchase. So the money is scarce money script is like the money is scarce mindset runs in the background, and income, growing, bonuses, high income, it doesn't fix it. I had a client, an attorney who she was just financially anxious every month of her adult life. She earned a lot of money by a lot of standards, was in the top 1% of earners, and she saved like crazy. She had more than enough by any measure to be okay, but she still felt anxious and just nervous when it came to money. When we tracked it down and really looked at what was going on, she grew up in a house where money was always tight in a way that shaped the atmosphere and the environment of her whole house, that there wasn't enough, just barely enough. And knowing that that barely enough was there, it was just always present, running in the background. And so she internalized the belief that there's never quite enough, that the shoe is always about to drop, that the financial security is not a state that you can actually arrive at. Like you can't be financially secure because money is always tight. So the belief didn't update when her income grew, right? You would think it would, like, okay, I grew up in poverty, or I grew up where there wasn't enough or where money was scarce, and now I'm making all of this money. You would think that that would cancel it out, but it doesn't. The software doesn't update automatically. It has to be examined and rewritten deliberately. So what it looked like for her and how it played out in her life is she kept a lot of cash in like a low earning environment because she couldn't move the money into investments without triggering some type of anxiety. And the anxiety of having it locked up was worse than the opportunity cost that she was losing. So years of opportunity for her money to compound and grow was being lost. Let's look at the money script number 2. Money is the root of all problems. And really the underlining message of that is avoid it. Avoid money. So what that looks like and how it shows up in the money is the root of all problems is the financial tasks that you should be doing. They pile up for months or years, right? The knowing about what to do just stresses you out. You get like a heaviness or anxiety every time money comes up that feels like dread before you can even get your thoughts together. It's kind of like the freeze response that I've talked about before. And it's tracked back to an early environment where talking about money or engaging with money just produced painful outcomes. Where looking at the numbers meant confronting something that nobody wanted to face. Where the financial conversations in the home, when they happened, they just all ended up badly. There may have been screaming or yelling or fights about money. So that produces money is bad. When you're in that type of environment or you grew up around that, then your nervous system learned that engaging with money produces a threat. So it does what nervous systems are designed to do. It keeps you away from the threat. That's what your body does. Our bodies are amazing, like machines in how they work to protect us. So one time I had a client who hadn't opened her statements in years. She didn't want to look at it. She didn't want to talk about it. She had filed extensions on tax returns that could have been done and could have been taken care of. And every financial task and everything that I gave her to do that I tried to meet with her to talk about just kept getting rebooked and kept moving forward like next week, the next month, the next quarter. And it wasn't because she was irresponsible. Like I keep running those points behind it because I don't want you to think that, oh, if she was responsible or if she handled her business, she would just do it. It's much more complicated than that. She was actually running an avoidance program, and that program had been installed in the childhood, like we talked about, where money problems meant something bad was coming. So what it cost her was years of missing out on market gains and market improvements and conversations that were never initiated. So she lost the opportunity cost for her money to grow and compound by being avoidant and not wanting to have those conversations. Money script number 3 is kind of like YOLO. Money is now. Spend it. So what that looks like for the money is now, just spend it. It's just what it sounds like. Money comes in, it goes out. You don't want to save anything. It's a pattern where as soon as the money comes in, it leaves out just as quickly, regardless of the income level. So these scripts can show up no matter how much money you make. In this money script, it gets traced back to an environment where scarcity was real and money had a tendency to disappear, right? And you may have learned, if this was your script, because you watched it, that money's temporary in your family, that you get what you can from it while it's here, and that holding on to it doesn't change the outcome. So you might as well just use it. You might as well just spend it. You hear the people say, like, you can't take it with you. I worked with a client whose income had grown significantly over the past few years, and his savings hadn't grown at all. Every income increase got absorbed, right? Every time he made more money, he found a way to just spend that money right out. Every windfall that came in or every bonus, it just leaked out. And it was something that typically happened immediately, and it happened on things that felt completely reasonable in the moment in his mind. And when we talked about his childhood, he described watching every good financial period in his family get followed by a bad one, right? When the money was there, it went. When it was gone, they managed. And so the lesson that he kind of absorbed was money doesn't stay. There's no point in the practice of holding it. Obviously, that's going to cost him, and it was costing him years of growth, years of net worth increase that he wasn't getting, and a financial life at 38 that looked exactly like the one that he'd been trying to escape since he was 22. So the fourth money script is money equals worth and must be visible. This is a really common one around a lot of clients. This is something that I had as well as, growing up in high school. I had to have the labels, the designer. When I went into college, I had to have that. Now imagine, I grew up with a family that, although we had money, they lost everything. My mom is a single mother of 3 children and getting public assistance, working, and I need to have the newest shoes. Or I remember one time when this is going to show how old I am, but I remember when the Reebok pumps came out. They were $99 and I had to have them. I got them in 6th grade. I was the only one to have them in the school. I was the first one to have them, and I'll be walking through. People were like, oh, let me feel it. Let me pump it up. Let me pump it up. That was absolutely ridiculous, but it was something about the need for people to think that we had it like that. And most of the students in the school were struggling, or their parents were struggling and didn't have it, but you wanted it to look like that. So in this script, the lifestyle is just the point, right? And what they have and what you actually are building doesn't really match the income. It's the feeling that really drives that. So you have to show it or it doesn't count as real, right? That's what Instagram is for. That's what social media is for. Like, you have to put it up there. So it's like a status symbol. And this is the one that surprises people most when I name it, because it doesn't really feel like trauma in all cases. Like, it doesn't always come from a place of, I was raised in poverty. I wanted the J's when I was a kid. I couldn't get them. So now I need every single one that comes out. But sometimes it feels like ambition, and it feels like success. It looks like success from the outside too, to a lot of people. And I had a client who, made high income, $750,000, and had a negative net worth. No children, wasn't married, just earning $750,000, but was not growing. Everything was impressive. Everything looked good, but it was finance. Everything that was visible was leased. And in her case, she grew up without much, and somewhere in the process of earning more than anyone in her family had ever had or could ever imagine, she learned that the appearances of wealth and wealth itself were the same thing. They're not the same thing. The belief underneath is that my worth is visible. What I show is what I am. If I can't see it and people can't see it, then it doesn't count. And obviously from this type of pattern, it produces years of income with no wealth. A financial life that looks like success and feels like instability, really, and a foundation that requires the income to continue indefinitely because there's nothing underneath it. This type of person, if they don't change this pattern, they're going to have to work for the rest of their life. I want to talk about why you can't just override the program. If you've tried a budget and it didn't hold, or you read this book, or you listened to this TikTok person and you tried to do what they said and you made a plan, why it makes complete sense, but it never produces the results that you're looking for. Because again, you're running a new application on an old operating system, and it may work for a little bit. You may be able to push yourself. You may be able to overcome with willpower. But as soon as some type of opposition shows up or time, you're going to fall back into the old system. The budget is an application. Again, the investment strategy is an application. The savings goal, tax plan, all of those things are applications. They run on top of whatever program was installed when you were young and watching and absorbing what money meant. And when the application and the operating system, when they conflict, which they will, because they're going to every time that the original threat pattern is triggered, the operating system is going to win because it's running subconsciously and it's been there the longest, and it's actually running your whole financial life. So the person running the scarcity script, they're going to find reasons not to move money into investments, or even though they understand that their cash is underperforming, the operating system is going to say, keep it where you can see it, where you can get to it, where it doesn't feel like it could disappear. Person running the avoidance script, They're going to open the financial planning app, feel the familiar tension, anxiety in their chest and their stomach. They're going to close it again. Not because they don't want to engage with it, not because they don't want to know what's going on, but again, because the operating system has tagged that financial engagement as a threat. And it's doing its job. It's keeping it away from it, keeping you away from it. The person running the spending script, they're going to save for 3 months, then something's going to come up. Always something always comes up. And then the savings is going to go. Because the program says money doesn't stay. Here's what I want you to know. The program is older and stronger than that 3-month-old intention. So the operating system is going to run, that spending script is going to run and take over every time. The person running that status script, they're going to get a raise and they're going to feel that familiar pull toward upgrading something visible. They're going to go get the new car, or they need to get this new bag or this new vacation. It's going to follow that operating system program. Not because they necessarily chose it, but because that program is running underneath. And here's what it means for you if you can see yourself in any of these scripts and any of these scripts are running for you. The strategy that you need is real. The plan that you need is real. And the financial work is real and important. And it can change your financial life when it has the right foundation. But if you try to build it on top of a program that you've never examined, it's going to hold until that program gets active or till it activates. And then it's not going to hold at all. You don't fix software programs with hardware upgrades, right? You examine the code that's running underneath. You name what's running, and then you make a conscious decision about what should be running instead. So let's talk about what rewriting that program actually looks like. I want to be clear that I'm not describing therapy in disguise or a process that requires years before anything can change financially. I'm describing a specific sequence that produces a real financial result because it addresses what was blocking them, what's underneath. So step one, I talk about this a lot, is identification. And hopefully you were able to see that and do that now, where you name your dominant money script, not the script that you wish you had or that looks better, but the real truth, looking at yourself in the mirror, the one that's actually running. The attorney knew she was anxious. The physician knew that she was avoiding. The other client knew that everything they spent disappeared. You have to see it clearly before you can change it, right? What is it that they say, like the first step to healing or change is to actually admit and know that you have a problem. Step two is the origin. And in that, you got to trace it back. Where did the program get written? What did you observe as a child? What did you feel? What did you decide, consciously or not, about what money meant? What did you see your parents do? What did you see your caretakers do with money? What did that feel like in that time? And it's not about blame, but it's about understanding the context that the code was written in. Because when you understand the context, then the program stops feeling like who you are and starts feeling more like what you learned. And what you learned can be unlearned. You can develop a new belief and a new system that you run. Step three is the financial work. So once the operating system has been examined and named, and the strategy becomes possible in a way that it wasn't before, because now you know what's going on. So it's not too loaded of an approach now. It's something that you can approach with grace and knowing now that you've named it and you've gotten the origin, you can do the financial work. It's important to know that these changes won't happen overnight. Again, they weren't installed overnight. Even now, when you implement a new operating system, are you do an upgrade, or you install new software into your computer, it takes time. And sometimes, the right conditions have to be met. If you're doing it on your phone, it has to be charged completely before it can be efficient, or it'll hold the upgrade and wait until the conditions are optimal in order to do that. And when it's running, you can't do anything. When it's doing that upgrade, you can't do anything else. The computer shuts down, the phone shuts down, and it does the work in the background. So it takes time to upload. And sometimes if you don't have enough storage, you'll get a message that you can't even do this upgrade. You need to get more storage. And so you might have to get a new computer or a new phone. So it's important to understand that there's a process and there's time that is involved in this new financial work and change that's going to take place. It's not going to happen overnight. Here's one thing I want you to do before you try a new financial plan. So I want you to take this assessment. It's not my assessment specifically, but it's an assessment and an honest question or questions that I want you to really sit with and take. What did money feel like in my house growing up? Not what your parents said about money, not what you hoped it would be, not what you thought it would be, but what it actually felt like when those money conversations came up, when the bills came in the mail, when it was time to go school shopping, or when it was a time to buy something, or when you needed something specifically financially. What did that feel like in the house that you were growing up in? The feeling is the beginning of the program, and naming it is where the real financial work starts. So the most important thing that I want you to understand is that you've been running this financial operating system that was installed before you even knew what was going on, before you had money, before you knew what money was. And that program has been shaping your financial decisions, not your choices in isolation, not your discipline, not your intelligence, not your worth, but the program. And the most important financial strategy that you can do is not a new budget or a new account or a new strategy. It's understanding what program that you're actually running, naming it, and deciding what should run instead. So if you want a deeper conversation, if what I've talked about today names something in your financial life and you're ready to address with someone who's legally required to act in your best interest as a fiduciary, then the strategy call link is in the description. It's a 45-minute, no pitch, no pressure, no product, just a real conversation from an actual advisor who has dealt with these things personally, who's seen this in my practice over the 16 years that I've been an advisor. As always, remember the pattern didn't start with you, but it can end with you. I'll see you in the next one.